Today's video is going to be an updated bookshelf tour for 2024, moving into 2025. So for anyone who is new to my channel, I did do a video like this around 18 months ago. However, things have changed a lot since then. We have acquired some new books and we've moved some stuff around. So I figured it was about time to do an updated version of this video. Also, if you're new to my channel, I live with my partner who is called Sam. My name is also Sam, so we have the same name and it can get a little bit confusing. The reason I mention it is because I don't want anyone to think that I'm talking about myself in the third person. But yeah, Sam is going to be joining me for this video. We actually filmed this video yesterday. I'm just filming the intro today. We're going to be taking you through these bookshelves behind me, and then there's also another Billy bookshelf on the other side of the room. I'm not going to focus too much on that. I will quickly pan through it, but that's where we keep our paperbacks, and then we keep most of our hardbacks on this side. This room is mostly fantasy, sci-fi and thrillers and horror, and then I also have a small bookshelf in the living room, which is where I keep my contemporary literary fiction and romances. We don't tend to separate our read books from our TBR books. However, most of the books behind me have been read by either me or Sam. Because we're both quite selective over the books that we buy, most of the books that we do buy are either special editions of books that we've already read and loved, or they are new releases that we tend to get around to quite quickly. The only other thing actually I did want to mention is I often get questions about the plastic wrap that we use to cover our books. So I've picked up a random example just to show you, but this is called archival paper and Sam buys it online and then wraps all of our books manually. I'll try and remember to leave a link to the archival paper that we buy in the description, but yeah, Sam does this all manually. I have nothing to do with it, but I do get questions about it quite a lot, so I thought I would mention. But yeah, we're gonna get into the video, so thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're going to start in the top left corner, and this shelf is quite simply The Wheel of Time and The Lord of the Rings. So these are the original Wheel of Time books.
Yep, these are the firsts, apart from The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt, just because of how stupidly expensive they are. Eventually I'll get them, but I think I'm missing one or two. Crossroads of Twilight and another one which I'm missing, but yeah. Nearly complete.
Moving on to the shelf below, we have more fantasy. So I think all of these are actually my books. We have a mixture of completed series and also books that I got through various subscriptions. So we have some books that I got through the Goldsborough subscription when I was subscribed like a couple of years ago, and then also a couple of Fairy Loot books. So some of my favourite editions on the shelf include When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is the Waterstone special edition. I also really like the Waterstone special editions of the Atlas trilogy by Livy Blake, and then we also have Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb, which is my favourite book that I got through the Goldsborough subscription. I love the stenciled edges on this one. This next shelf is even more fantasy books, so again we have a couple of random books that I've got through subscription boxes, and then my favourite books on this shelf, this is a difficult one actually, because we have the David trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty in hardback, which is a series that I love. I really want to reread the series as well because I read it back in 2021, so quite a few years ago. My favourite editions on this shelf are probably the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. I love these editions. I think these are the Broken Binding edition. Yeah, Sam got me these for my birthday or Christmas. Yeah, it was one of those, birthday or Christmas, and yeah, I love them. I think they are very, very pretty. Next up we have the Robin Hobb shelf. So this actually takes up more than one shelf. We have most of the editions on this shelf, and then if I pan across, we have the final trilogy and also The Inheritance on the shelf over there. But this is one of my favourite series. If you've been on my channel for a while, then you'll know that it took me a good few years to finish this series, but this is one of the first series that me and Sam buddy read, which is why we wanted to collect the original hardbacks. Hopefully you can see these next books. We are right down on the floor now, but on this next shelf we have, again, more fantasy. We have some Scott Lynch, some Patrick Rothfuss, and then some Tad Williams and a Mark Lawrence book on the end. The Lies of Locke Lamora is a series that I started reading earlier this year, so I've read the first two books so far. I think the editions that we have on this shelf are the Broken Binding editions.
Yeah, they're the tier 2, and then on the left from them you've got the Gallant's signed editions, which they did earlier this year. Still yet to get the third one, but hopefully it'll be arriving soon. And then the Tad Williams editions, these are the I believe the original BCE hardback. paperbacks. The Dragonbone chair we actually luckily found in a charity store, which is quite local to us, so that was a really lucky pickup. So at the bottom here we have my Dresden Files collection by Jim Butcher. I'm currently rereading this series, actually on Audible at the moment, narrated by James Masters. It's one of my favourites, to be fair. The only reason we've got the paperbacks is because the UK editions, I don't believe they did hardbacks in the first few books of this series, and the US versions are just too expensive to basically import in. We've also got the Cradle series by Will White at the back, one of my other favourite series that I read last year. That's a progression fantasy, one of the first progression fantasies that I read. It's excellent. And then at the left hand side we've got the Nicholas Eames books, Kings of the Wild and The Bloody Rose, which again, two of my favourites. With these paperback shelves, we basically have at the back boxes, as you might be able to see there, which stack up the books in the back row just to make them a bit more visible. Just because we've got too many, we wanted to make use of the space that we've got, and we didn't want to have one whole shelf dedicated to just one row of paperbacks.
Moving across, we have some more Robin Hobb paperbacks, and then we also have one of my favourite series, which is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. At the back you can see my Game of Thrones collection, and also we have some Brandon Sanderson paperbacks and a few other random series. I've also just realised that Jennifer L. Armentrout book needs to be on the other shelf, so I'll sort that out once I've finished filming this video, but yeah, more random paperbacks.
So on this shelf we've got a mix of fantasy, sci-fi and horror. On the left you've got James Islington's Lycanius trilogy. That's the tier 1 Broken Binding set, which they did a couple of years back. And then his new book, The Will of the Many, which is the first book of his new trilogy called The Hierarchy, I believe. Next we've got a bunch of Chuck Wendig books, which is an author I was introduced to last year, which I really like, starting with The Wanderers, which is like a dystopian future duology, which is great. Then you've got the Silo trilogy, which I believe Apple are doing a TV show about. I think the second season comes out, I think that comes out this week or next week, to be fair. And then we've got Justin Cronin. You've first got the Passage trilogy. We've only got 2 books of that at the moment. These are the fine press editions that Cemetery Dance did, I believe about a decade or so ago now, which I believe are the only fine press editions of this particular trilogy. And then you've got The Ferryman, which is a science fiction book, which I think you read recently.
I read very recently and really enjoyed, so yeah. So other than the Robin Hobb books, which we've already gone through, this next shelf is our Brandon Sanderson hardbacks. So we have a couple of different series here. We have some of the Mistborn Era 2 books, as well as the Stormlight Archive and the Secret Projects. Only 3 of them. There's one more that we need to get, which is the Wizard's Guide to Medieval England, the Frugal Wizard's Guide to Medieval England. I always get the name of that book wrong, but I don't know actually where we are going to put that, or where we're going to put Winds of Truth when that comes out, because this shelf is looking a little bit full. This next shelf is probably my favourite shelf in our entire library. I think it's something about the colours that I really love, but also it has some of my favourite editions in this room. So we have the first 2 books in the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. These are the Broken Binding editions. We also have the Illumicrate editions of the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, which is another of my favourite fantasy series.
We've got the Dandelion Dynasty Quartet in the middle, which is the purple book set. That is a reprint of the series that Broken Binding did a special edition of a couple of years ago, because it was so popular. I think that they just wanted to get another set out there. This is the Midnight Purple Colour Scheme edition. I'm currently reading that at the moment. The Grace of Kings was one of my favourite reads earlier this year, and I think going through the Wall of Storms at the moment, it's probably going to be another favourite read. And the final 2 books, The Sword of Kaigan, which again is one of mine and Sam's favourite books of all time, especially when it comes to standalone fantasy.
Yeah, definitely.
That is the Wraithmarked edition, which they did on Kickstarter last year or the year before. It was at the time the only special edition of Sword of Kaigan, but I think there's been a couple of other companies now which have picked that one up. And the final book book is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy
by N.K.
Jemisin, the 5th season. This is the fine press that Curious Kings did last year, which arrived earlier this year. That was an early birthday/Christmas present for Sam.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite books, I think, that we have in the collection, because just the attention to detail and the artwork, I think, is stunning.
On this shelf, again, we've got a mix of fantasy books of different subgenres. Just to pick out a few which are probably some of my absolute favourites. The Bloodwater Legacy trilogy by Chris Wooding. I think it's a really underappreciated series. More people should absolutely read it. We've also got The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buhleman. This is probably one of my favourite fantasy books of last year, and he released a prequel book to that, The Daughter's War, this year, and again, one of my favourite reads of this year. And after reading those two books, I had to pick up the Fine Press edition by Midworld Press, because it's the only company who have done a fine press edition of that book, and I think it absolutely deserved it. And then finally, my absolute favourite, or one of my absolute favourite series of all time, The Black Company by Glenn Cook. Midworld Press are currently doing a release of the initial trilogy of that series, and so I definitely had to pick that up when it came out.
This next shelf is a mixture of Joe Abercrombie on the left and John Gwynne on the right. So John Gwynne is quite a special author for us, because I was actually reading the Faithful and the Fallen series when we first met. So I think I read the first 3 books on my Kindle, or I borrowed them through my library. And then by the time I got through to reading Wrath, we'd actually moved in together. So I was able to read Sam's copy, which is kind of cool. We actually met John Gwynne at an event recently in Bath, and he was so lovely. We do also have a copy of The Fury of the Gods, which is his most recent release. However, that doesn't fit on the shelf. It currently has nowhere to live.
We've actually got 2 editions of them. Got a standard signed edition, and we've also got the Goldsboro edition as well. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be keeping both of them, but yeah, definitely need to fit them in somewhere.
I'm sure Sam is very excited to be talking about this next shelf, because this is the Robert McCammon collection.
I think Robert McCammon is compared a lot to Stephen King, because they're both historical fiction and horror authors written in a very similar time period. I do prefer the prose of Robert McCammon more. I think his writing is just a little bit slicker. He's got a big overarching series which is called the Matthew Corbett series. It's a historical fiction series following a young detective in New York and London. I think it's absolutely excellent. We've got a few standalone horrors which I really enjoyed. Most of those books I did actually listen to instead of physically read. I think the narrator for all of them are great. 2 of my favourite books of all time are written by Robert McCammon as well. We've got The Boy's Life, which you've read as well.
Yep, you made me read it.
I did make you read that one. We've got a fine press edition by Suntuck Press, which came earlier this year, which is one of my favourite books in this whole collection, to be honest with you. I'm really happy I picked that one up. Next, we've got the Malazan series. These are the Stephen Erickson and Ian Esselmont books. This is probably the best piece of written fiction that ever was, that ever is, and that ever will be. Okay, Sam is going to be reading this one next year with me. She's confirmed that she will read all 10 books.
No, I've said I'll read the first book and see how I go, because this series is so intimidating to me. There's 10 books in the main series, and then there's all of these different spin-offs, and I'm a little bit scared.
Yeah, you don't have to read the spin-offs. You can just go for the full 10-book series. I think the spin-offs by Ian Esselmont, especially the novels of Malazan, which he's done, which can be intersected between the main series, do add a lot to the world and a lot to the characters which are on the periphery of the main Malazan Book of the Fallen. But yeah, it is absolutely my favourite series of all time, and I don't think, unfortunately, that will change. I think I've peaked too early, but it is what it is. We've got just to go in a bit of detail, we've got a few sub-press editions. We've got the reprints of The Gardens of the Moon and The Deadhouse Gates, which Subpress are doing. They're going to be doing the whole series. Unfortunately, their print run has been a bit disastrous so far, so it's taken them a while to get those out. We've got the BCE editions of the main series and a few Bantam Press editions of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And then on the second row, we've got mainly Ian Esselmont's books, which are, again, Bantam Press UK editions and a couple of other sub-press editions for Stephen Erickson for Forge of Darkness and Fall of Light, which are the prequel series of the main series, which is set about 10,000 years before the events of Malazan Book of the Fallen. So on these two shelves, we've got the Sun Eater series, which is one of my favourite sci-fi series of all time. I think we're still waiting on one more book in the series to be released, but every company under the sun are doing special editions of these of this series just because of how popular it is. So we've got Anderida Press on the left, we've got the original hardbacks, and we've also got first 3 books of the broken binding editions that they're doing in the main series. So lots more still to pick up in that one, so we definitely need more space. And then next we have a few Adrian Tchaikovsky books. The first one that I read of his was Children of Time, which I think he's probably most well known for, which is one of his earliest pieces of work, which I absolutely love, so I had to pick up a hardback of that. So on the next shelf we have Neil Asher. Now Neil Asher is probably the first author that I picked up when I started reading as a hobby back in 2010, and I basically just read his whole bibliography. His books are incredibly addictive. It's a lot of speculative science fiction, very description heavy, very action heavy, kind of verging on cyberpunk in a way, but yeah, love his work.
This next shelf is a mix of a few different authors, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but the one series on this shelf that I do want to get around to eventually is the Tetziclan duology by Arkady Martin, the first book being A Memory Called Empire. Sam has read this duology and said it is excellent, very political sci-fi, which I feel is my kind of thing. An author on this shelf that I would really like to try is John Scalzi. We have the US edition of Starter Villain, which I think is his most recent release, or it's one of his most recent releases. And I got this in the US because I much prefer the US cover to the UK edition, but I've heard really good things about this, and I've heard it's very fun. It has cats, and yeah, I would like to try this author because you've read quite a few of his books, haven't you?
Yeah, I've read the Old Man's War series. I think it's like 6 or 7 books in all. His books can be very quirky, but they're really good fun and you don't really want to put them down. So on this shelf we've got a few Stephen Baxter books, which I read a long time ago. Richard Morgan, which kind of does like crime sci-fi a lot, as well as Edward Ashton, which is a new author that I started reading last year and this year. His books are really good fun. I think Mickey 7 has actually got a movie release.
It has, yeah.
Yeah, which is coming out next year, I think.
I think Robert Pattinson's.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think he's the main guy. Yeah. So on this shelf, on the left, we've got more Adrian Tchaikovsky hardbacks. These are a mix of some Broken Binding, some Forbidden Planet, some Goldsborough. I think the only 2 on here that I haven't read are The City of Last Chances and The House of Open Wounds, which are the Goldsborough editions, which both of us want to read at some point.
I think we should buddy read those at some point.
We've got the Broken Binding editions of Andy Weir's books as part of the sci-fi subscription, as well as the 3 Body Problem, which again is another Broken Binding science fiction sub-box release, which I'm really excited that they did, just because it's really difficult to get hold of the initial trilogy in hardback, and the artwork's beautiful. And I really love that trilogy. I haven't watched the TV show yet. I've heard it's good. I think that's one that you want to pick up as well.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, definitely.
And then last but not least, we've got Ian Banks's Culture series, which again is one of the first science fiction series that I read when I picked up reading as a hobby. I think I've read the whole of the Culture series, absolutely loved it, and I'm trying to get all of his books in hardback, but again, some of them are just extremely rare.
I got your copy of Player of Games for your birthday, which is up on...
It's up on the shelf because it didn't have any room, but you got me the Player of Games Folio Society book, which is the second book in the Culture series, but again, that book can be read as a standalone, and that's one you've read as well.
That's the one that you made me read when we first started seeing each other, and I liked it.
Okay, so for these last 2 shelves, we've got Peter F. Hamilton, one of my favourite science fiction authors of all time, and we've also got the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey, which I believe is 2 authors. And they've done a new book this year, The Mercy of Gods, which is a new trilogy in the Captives War. I read that earlier this year. I thought it was great. It has a lot of potential. Didn't live up to some of the moments the Expanse gave us, But again, it's the first book of a trilogy, so I still think it has potential, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the books. And then finally, we've got a special edition of Dune. I've only read the first book in the initial Dune trilogy. I've heard a lot of good things about the second and third book, so at some point I will be getting to them. And I think you'll probably be reading that at some point, right?
Probably. Moving on to the other side of the room, and this is where we keep our horrors, thrillers, sci-fi, and also YA paperbacks. We do have a few hardbacks on the shelf, but they tend to be more random horror hardbacks or crime hardbacks rather than sci-fi and fantasy, because we like to try and keep authors together where we can, unless we've got a mixture of paperbacks and hardbacks. But we decided to separate hardbacks from paperbacks a few months ago, just because it looks a little more even on the shelves. I'll also insert some footage here of the bookshelves that we have in the other room. At one point, this was meant to be a rainbow bookshelf, but it kind of fell away as I added more and more books and I couldn't fit them into the rainbow. But this is where I keep my contemporary fiction, literary fiction, as well as some classics. If you do have any questions about any of the editions that we showed in this video, or any of the editions that we didn't show, I know that we didn't go through every single book individually, but I didn't want this video to be too long, so we kind of picked out the highlights. But if you do have any questions at all, then please leave me a comment in the description and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. But otherwise, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye.